Alright, Lab 7 here. We're going to do a dual element transducer and we're going to perform thickness measurements, and that's coming right out of your lab. So, here's my dual element transducer. I've got a 5 megahertz, 1/4 inch diameter. You probably can't read that very well. That's what it says up here. It's Panametrics DHC 711 RM. And then here's my 1/4 inch diameter here. But just so you can see it, we've got that crosstalk barrier in the middle. If I wipe some of the coupling off, you can see it a little easier. Got that crosstalk barrier right in the middle, so one side can't talk to the other until you put it down on the part. So, here's some of the parts we're going to test, just a couple of little thin pieces. Okay, here's my step wedge that I was going to use to calibrate. And then we're going to go over here, we're going to calibrate to a 1-inch screen. So we got a little bitty thin stuff, okay, probably up to about a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch, stuff like that. And we're just going to measure all this using our regular old scope here. So, 3 main things. Range. We're going to go down to, really we should go down to about a 1/2 inch, because that's all about we're going to need. Okay, range, velocity. We're going to do steel, so that's 230. Alright, bring all of our delays back to 0. Whoops. Actual 0, not negative 300 here. These knobs are a little messy here. Alright, so go and take him down to 0. Alright, gain, I'm just bringing my gain down to about 30 or so. 30 will be good. Now, if you were watching this, we're going to go through probe delay here. Since we have a dual element, this dual element really acts as a delay. So here is, okay, I'm just touching the end of this transducer. There's my signal that I want to use as my new initial pulse, because that is where the sound's actually starting. Because you realize the crystals are up here and then we're directing that sound down here. So, looks like we've got a repeat right there. We're going to use that as our initial pulse, and we're going to set up on a 1/4 inch. We have a 1/2 inch screen. So if we roll our range up a little bit, or sorry, our gain, there's our 1/2 inch signal right there. So we're going to put that on a 1/2 inch. Looking at that, we have 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. We want to look at something else here. We want to make sure that we're on dual, which we aren't on dual. So when you turn that on, now that should have cleaned us up a whole bunch, which it did, and that makes life a lot easier. So go to range, and now we're back to 1/2 inch. So now we're actually using the dual element side of that transducer. And if we go back to a 1/4 inch step, okay, here's my step wedge, here's 1/4 inch, putting the transducer down on there. There's my 1/4 inch thickness. I'm just using my probe delay to go back and forth. Okay, here's my 1/2 inch, so I've calibrated to a 1/2 inch range. Pretty close anyway. 1/2 inch. Alright, there he is. So now if I just come over here, we're going to pay attention to this whole thing now, because we got a whole bunch of stuff happening, but we only care about where that signal breaks the baseline. So, part 1 is 20% of a 1/2 inch. Okay? Part 2 is about 14% of a 1/2 inch. Okay? And then part number 3 is about that same. So let's go to another part and go right there. 40% of a 1/2 inch. So here's part 1, 20% of a 1/2 inch. I'll just let you see it over here. Okay, here's part 1. Part 2. Okay, come back over here. There's part 2. Coming up about 14% of a 1/2 inch. Alright. Then part number 3, right over here. Plug it down on there. There it is again. Okay, 40% of a 1/2 inch. So give you a second to use that. Okay, there's part 1 again, 20%. Part 2 again, 14%.